Hi there, you're listening to the Practical Stoic Podcast with your host, me, Simon Drew. If you'd like to listen to over 200 episodes that were recorded before 2020, then you can head to my Patreon site. It's patreon.com/Simon J.E. Drew. We'd love to have you there, and any support is greatly appreciated. We'd love to also have you on our Facebook community, the Practical Stoic Mastermind. But for now, enjoy the show. Hi there, my name's Simon Drew, and welcome to the Practical Stoic Podcast. Now, I'm particularly excited about this week's interviews for two reasons. So, firstly, each interview consists not only of myself and one other guest, but of two other guests. So each interview is a trio, and it's absolutely wonderful. I had such a great time talking to these incredible people about Stoicism and life, and it's so cool. It's a different dynamic having two people on the other end of the call. The other reason why I'm particularly excited is because 3 out of the 6 guests who we have this week have been listening to the podcast for quite some time now, sometimes up to 2 years. And so it's really cool that they've been listening for a long time and now they're actually on the show discussing Stoicism with me. I absolutely love it, and I'm really grateful that we've had this opportunity. But today, I have 2 really special guests for you. We're going to be discussing Stoic parenting, especially Stoic fathering. And the guests who I have on today are Julien Marchand and also Yann Audran. So Julien is the host of the Future Proof You podcast for working dads, and he's doing an amazing job helping dads to really find that work-life balance and to be the best dad that they can be, because that's such an important job. And man, we had such a great conversation. He invited his friend along to the conversation as well, his friend Yann, who, as you might like to know, lives about 20 minutes from me here on the Sunshine Coast, and I didn't even know this until we were on the call. But hey, if we weren't doing social distancing, we would have just done it in person. But look, I'm really excited for you guys to jump into this interview. We have such a great conversation around what it means to be a dad. Not that I know anything, but I'm learning from them. And without any further ado, I present to you Julien and Yann. We are here with Julien and Yann from the Future Proof You podcast for working dads. Now, I'm just excited to have you both on here because I know that you've been influenced by Stoicism. I know that it's helped you both with your parenting to become better fathers. And man, I know that there's a lot of fathers who listen to this podcast. And so I thought, what a great mix that we could talk about Stoicism and parenthood and how, and I know that I'm not a father, so I can't offer that kind of advice, even though I came on your show and offered that unwarranted wisdom from someone who's never had a kid. But I want to give you both the opportunity just to have a chat and see that is the beauty of fatherhood right there.
Yeah, there we go. My 6 years old coming in, checking, are you still using the iPad? Yes, I am.
I love it. It's great. No, but I want to give it over to you guys and let you introduce yourselves and basically just tell the audience who you are and what you do.
All right. Well, so I'll go first. My name is Yann. I've only been a guest to Julien's podcast, so I'm not part of his podcast, but we are very good friends. So originally I'm French. I came to Australia 13 years ago now, just to travel, discover the country, and fell in love with the people here and the beauty of Australia. Not long after that, I met my wife. My wife is Japanese, so at home, it's a good mix of different culture. And we have 2 daughters. Mia is 6, turning 7 next month, and Anne is 19 months old. And we are expecting another baby in August. So
hey,
we'll
wonderful.
have my hands full for sure. Yeah, this time we are getting a boy, so managed to get it right this time. So that's exciting.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And I'm definitely going to ask you later on once Julien's introduced himself about, kind of mixing, like how you have felt the process has been, kind of uniting the 2 cultures for you and your wife, in the family. I think that's so cool as well. But Julien, tell us a little bit more about yourself, mate.
So my name is Julien, and I happen to be French as well. And I came to Australia to do my studies. Loved it. I was in Sydney at the time, and then did everything right by the book in order to come back and to get a job here, and everything was going according to the very specific plan that I had, until I realized I wasn't happy. But at the same time, I did meet my wife, who happens to be Japanese as well. So we've got we share that background with Yann, and
this is awesome.
a lot of things happen. Yeah, I know. It's so funny, and a lot of things happen in my life. When my son was born, Tayo, 10 years ago, and then my daughter was born 7 years ago, Saya. And she had an accident at birth, like a very important one. And it made us move from Sydney to the Sunshine Coast, because there was a really good doctor there. And that's where I ended up meeting Yann through our wives. We're already hanging out together as Japanese moms, and they go, "Oh, you need to meet my French husband." I'm like, "Okay, I'm not here to meet French people, okay?" and then we really hit it off. And then I think we were learning together how to be dads, like balancing work and then being dad at the same time in a different culture with wives of different cultures themselves. And we didn't realize, but at the time, both of us were really like drifting into life. Like with work, we knew where we were going with work, but we just didn't know where we were going with life. And forward a couple of years, I think that was 2 years ago, Yann made me discover your podcast, and I realized that that's what I was missing. And Yann has always been influential in like sharing like the podcast. There was a podcast, and then even last month he came down to Sydney, and just before self-isolation, right? And for my birthday, he gave me a copy of Meditation from Marcus Aurelius, because he knew that I had a audible version, but the meditation, it's really hard to listen to it. And so it came down from the Sunshine Coast with a hard copy and goes, there you go.
Yeah. You have to remember that Julien doesn't read books, really, he listens to them. So that's something different, isn't it? Have you started yet?
Yeah, I've started. I've read three times the first chapter. I'm like, how come is he thinking so many people? And then, I turned first to, okay, so what did he say about his dad? Oh shit, not much.
It's more about his mom, isn't it?
It's one of those books that really, like, I couldn't see myself listening to it. You have to look at it, and you have to appreciate the poetry that he speaks in, and you have to appreciate just the choice of words and the choice of man. It's so beautiful, and when you take your time with it. Meditations is man, one of the most soul nourishing books that you could possibly read, right?
Yeah. And it's easy because you can go back to it anytime very quickly. You can read a page and that's enough, for the day. You don't have to smash the whole chapter or whole book like it is in his book.
One passage is enough to keep your mind going for the whole day. I mean, you can just sit on that and try to think about what he meant. But we can start with Marcus Aurelius, right? Because one thing that I absolutely love about his approach is that he did start his journal by listing all of the people in his life who he had learned from. And that's such a beautiful thing. I think that everybody should do that, because what it does is two things. Firstly, it will give you your own personal ideal for who you want to be, right? And secondly, it'll also teach you that, hey, I'm not an island here. Like, I require so many people around me, like fathers, like mothers, like teachers, like friends, who can teach me things about how to be a better human being. And I think that that's so important for people to realize that we are social creatures, and we need good support systems in our life. So I wanted to actually ask you guys, and this is a good segue into it, like, who are the fathers, or actually, I mean, like, you've got your fathers, right? But who do you see as exemplaries of great fatherhood, and maybe even with your own fathers, because that probably might be the answer. What did you see in your own fathers that taught you something about how to be the best father you could be?
All right.
All right. I'll start, Julien, if that's okay.
Go for
it. Yeah, my father, and I guess that's because of him that what I am today and what I try to be for my two daughters. My father was the typical dad who was working 8 a.m. until 8 p.m. at night, six days a week. And on Sunday, he'd be tired. So he'll do an activity with us, but he didn't have much of a presence in the household. So it was mainly our mum. So I remember when I was young, when I was about my daughter's age now, I could see the other kids sharing a lot with their dad, doing more activities that I was doing. And I thought I was a bit envious, but I didn't know any better. So for me, it was just normal. That's how it is. Dad is bringing the money home and we didn't miss anything. We had a house, we had food, we had everything normal. So not going to complain. But when I met my wife and then we had the kids, and my wife made me realize that I needed to be much more present at the beginning. So that was me. I was probably 1 year old, because I thought I'm just gonna go to work like my dad, and have a little bit of time. But I just didn't know really.
An escape.
And so an escape. Yeah. So she made me understand that, and then it did trigger the memory from childhood, how I was envious of my friends having more time with their dad than I had. So I'm like, okay, well, you don't want to be like him. Not that he was a bad father, not at all, and we still have a good relationship. But do I have a great relationship with him? Not really. And I don't want that with my daughters. I want to have a great relationship. So definitely I'm aiming to be the best father I can be for them, to be an example, a role model. And that was trigger number one, was my wife. And then trigger number two was discovering Stoicism through Simon a couple of years ago. And just helped me to be that role model for them. And now when I see the relationship I have with Mia, I'm really, really happy, really grateful for it.
Yeah, man. Yeah, that's nice. Appreciate you sharing that. And Julien, how about yourself? And once you've answered this, Julien, as well, I want to know why you started the podcast too, as well, because I think that's awesome, and I'd love to hear your experience with that.
It comes from that. It's quite similar to Yann, and in a sense of, well, my dad was in the Navy, so it's not that it wasn't in on Saturday, it wasn't even there on Sundays, because he was sailing somewhere across the world, and then he wasn't really used to be with kids when he was coming back at home, if you want, right? And we were in like paradisiac location, like we were when I was 3 years old. We were in Tahiti because it's a French territory and you need to have your navy over there. And but then my parents got divorced, and my dad did everything right financially. Like he paid allowance, he paid even for my school later on, stuff like that. But I came to realize that I don't really know much about my dad, and I only realized that I had a dad and I had a mom, and I was really close to my mom, and then I had a stepfather, and my stepfather was a really good provider as well, but really not getting to know the kids. And it's only when I got my first kid, Tayo, that I realized, I'm not equipped for this. Like, I just don't know. I don't have a model. I know I want to be involved because this is like the modern dad, but I just don't know how. All I know is go to work and make as much money as I can, exchanging my time at work. And then I come home, I'm tired. And I know I'm not supposed to yell at my kids, but at the time when your baby is 1 year old and you're not going to go through that pretty soon again, and you're not sleeping, and it gets so hard. And I think that's what saved me was Stoicism. Actually gave me it became a parenting guide, and I think that's a conversation when I was young, being able to have a set of rules that we can apply in all aspects in our life, including in fatherhood. And so in summary, no model as a father, and all I want to be is the total opposite of my dad, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and this is an interesting discussion we could go down as well, because we've evolved in all kinds of directions as human beings, right? And so, some of them good, some of them not necessarily as clearly good. One example is, you might look back to when we were in like hunter-gatherer tribes, and you would think that the kid was, in constant contact with his father or mother, constantly being held, constantly being nourished and nurtured and taught and around the tribe, and constantly having role models to look up to. And you look fast forward to today, and there are a lot of fathers who are like you guys have experienced, almost absent from their children's lives. And this isn't something that is necessarily for us to judge, because this is just the culture that we've now been thrown into. That's just how we live our lives. And you get a job, and you have to get that job, and you have to keep that job, and you have to keep on working after day and night, and there's always more to do. And I think that it comes from a place of love as well, because I mean, like, my dad was constantly on the road as a salesperson, but at the end of the day, by him doing that, we got, man, the best life I could possibly have hoped for, right? Like, and it showed that he cared about his family, that responsibility that he took for always giving us exactly what he thought that we deserved, which was the best, right? And so how do you balance that? I mean, like, Julian, I know that you started the podcast, the Future You podcast, Future Proof You, sorry. And you're trying to help working dads to balance that. Like, how do you balance that?
So it came from, I came across a study when I was doing a bit of research on that, and came to realize that, you've got 25% of current dads who are traditional dads, meaning, they're like the dad that Yann and I and you, Simon, described, where they're working a lot, they're providing, and they accept the child minding to be done by the spouse, and they're happy, right? Because they live according to their ideal, and they're happy. And so, as you said, no judgment there. And then you have the modern dads, 20% of them, who believe that everything should be shared, so work and child minding should be shared, and they do it, and they're happy, right? And then there's 55% of dads who wants to be modern dads, but they don't know how. And so they actually behave as traditional dad by going to work and spending 100% of their time at work. And they're not happy, because they're behaving the opposite of what they want to do, and they don't know how to. And it took me my wife, my friends, Stoicism, Yann, to realize that, well, first of all, it's about future-proofing ourselves, like looking after ourselves first. Then we can look after our family. We can future-proof our family, and then finally we can even start or look after our own business and future-proof our own business. And so I started interviewing dads who were managing to get that balance. And when I say balance, it's their balance. It doesn't mean 50-50, right, between fatherhood and work. And I just learned so much from them, and I'm just sharing all the tips from everyone, all the dads, what they're doing, and share that with them. And it's funny how even dads who don't know Stoicism, they end up applying a lot of Stoicism principles without knowing it, just because it's their own experience of life.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, I've heard from so many people who say, I never really knew what Stoicism is, but, I always, now that I know what it is, I know that my dad was an example of Stoicism, because he was, he did what was necessary, and he focused on, providing for the family. And so I think that a lot of people associate that with Stoicism. But, what's most interesting to me is how do you get somebody firstly into the state of mind where they actually genuinely want to become the best dad that they can be. And then when they're in that state of mind, what are the procedures, what are the tools, what are the tactics that you would give people? And this might be best framed to ask you guys both, maybe starting with you, Jan, like, what's the best advice that you ever got for how to be a better father?
Good question. I think it's I think it's an everyday battle. firstly, when you become a father, with the days passing by, you just improving yourself automatically. You become a different person. Since I'm a dad, I've completely changed. I know it sounds cheesy, but you, Simon, you still have a lot of time. Please enjoy it. Continue doing what you're doing, because then when you start to have kids, man, it's another game. But it's good. I think, yeah, it's a challenge. It's an everyday challenge. But what I've been using, for me, Stoicism is a bit like a roadmap, okay, on how to live the happy life, isn't it? And the first principle, the dichotomy of control, if you get that, if you understand it, and it's really easy to understand, it's so helpful to start with. It helped me to remove frustration and anger, for example. Not that I was an angry person, but when you got baby crying and you don't know what they're crying, and you're tired because you've done your 40 hours a week, and you just want to have some peace. You're not used to that noise. Yeah.
And they do it on purpose, Yann, right? They cry on purpose.
Yeah. So when you start to apply the dichotomy of control and see, okay, what I can control and what I can't. So here's a baby. It's crying because it's the baby, needs something, needs some attention, cuddles, food, whatever. What can I do? I can stay calm and find a solution. So this is a very good starting point. I've just used, and I use it every day. I just use it this morning with my 6-year-old, and I'm even teaching her now without calling it the dichotomy of control. But I'm teaching her to control, like see what she can control and what she can't. So this morning, because now we are there's no school here in Queensland for the next 5 weeks. So today was sort of the first real day of homeschooling. So we went to the school this morning, blah, blah, state school, and picked up a booklet. And I was just reading, trying to get my head around. I'm not a teacher. I'm not born a teacher. And it's not my first language either. So even more obstacle for me. And we had to read a story. I think it was called The Dog and the Fox. And then we had to analyze the character, something like this. But she wasn't really into the story much, and I was forcing it. I was like, come on, let's focus, let's read that story, until she was really unhappy, and until she started crying a little bit. And I could feel in myself, it was coming up, the anxiety, the frustration was coming up. I wanted to yell and just drop it out, This would not have helped for sure. I would have just escalated into yelling in the house and dramas. So I'd just say, okay, that's fine. All right. What about we find a story that we like and we go from there, really calmly, and the problem was solved just instantly. It was like magic, you know what I mean?
Because when you don't trigger it, it's awesome.
Yeah, but 2 years ago, before Stoicism, I would have blown up. I would have like lost it. Oh, well, you don't want to do it. Let's not do it, and run away or whatever.
The teacher said we have to do it.
And that's one of the great things about Stoicism, isn't it? That it really gives us these tools that can allow us to understand that we do actually have problem-solving abilities. As human beings, it is within our nature to be able to solve problems, and Stoicism says, here's how you do it, right? And it really does simplify so much of our decision-making process. And yeah, Julien, how about yourself? Like, what's the best advice that you've received, or even how do you use Stoicism with your parenting?
Well, sorry, Julian, I might have taken the easy one there.
No, I totally agree. Well, I agree with dichotomy of control every day, right? And especially able to apply to your kids as well. Like, what can they control and can they not control? So it's being able to apply to you and to see how it applies to them as well. But for me, the biggest thing that I learned, and it was more the universe teaching me, and I was able to put it into words later on, was memento mori, right? When Saya, when she was born and she died at birth, and for 20 minutes she was dead, and during those 20 minutes you're like, hang on, I haven't enjoyed her life just yet. Like it's like she's actually dead, and you've got so many thoughts that go through, like it's crazy. And then she came back to life, and but now she suffers from cerebral palsy, and she's in a wheelchair and fighting for her life, and she's doing great. Like she's fantastic. But until I experienced that, I never really thought, that or she could die, or I could die like tomorrow. And it took me 2 years. It took me 2 years, because for the first 2 years of, when you've got very young kids, every day is a battle, so you don't really have time to reflect. But after that, and when I came across Memento Mori, I'm like, wow, like in your face, like, and learn to enjoy Memento Mori, like to see it as a positive thing. And so no one told me this, but I experienced it and then was able to read it in Stoicism. So that was super powerful for me.
Yeah. That's,
sorry, I brought
that's
the, I brought the atmosphere pretty low.
No, that's some real life experience, right? Like that's some real life lessons that you've learned. And it's just been absolutely shoved in your face, right? And those are the things that, man, like you need to relay that to people, and I'm sure that you do on your podcast, right? Because people have experiences that other people don't experience, and therefore we should be sharing those sorts of things with people. Like, the best people who I've talked to who can teach me about Memento Mori are those people who have suffered from cancer and survived, for example. Like those are the people, you talk to them and they truly understand, without even knowing about Stoicism, how valuable life is and how much they should be trying to live better, right?
And right now with coronavirus, we only read statistics and numbers, like, it doesn't happen to kids, blah, 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 blah. But when you've experienced something that has lower statistics, so, having an accident at birth and having your kids with a brain damage, that's very, very low statistics. But it does happen, and it did happen to us. And so then when you receive the statistics of, how many people died, how many kids have coronavirus, you're like, hang on, that's just not going to happen to others. That can also happen to me. So let's work on the worst case scenario, and then let's prepare for it. Everything takes a different meaning.
No, I know what you're saying. Like it really does completely change your perspective, right? Different experiences just completely change everything, right? And I want to ask that, and I have to apologize, because just as I've started talking here, somebody's started a chainsaw or something literally right outside my window. I have no idea what they're doing, but we'll work with it. I'll just mute myself.
It's a beautiful day outside for gardening.
I didn't realize we had a helipad right outside my apartment. But I wanted to know. So everybody always says when you have your first child, it completely changes who you are as a person, and you immediately feel this connection. And okay, a bit of backstory. I genuinely have always felt a sort of confusion around babies. I don't understand them. The tiny little potatoes.
Well, that's normal,
But like when they get to about 2 or 3 and they start to get a personality, I can start having a conversation with them. That's when I'm pretty cool with kids, and kids genuinely tend to like me, right? And we're fine with each other. But is it true when you have your first child or whatever, like what's the feeling like?
Yeah, it's absolutely true.
Well, you may question it at 3 a.m. in the morning after 6 months of not sleeping. you might question the attachment though. But I think women have it easier or different, like
not easier. Not easier.
Yeah, sorry, not easier. It takes 9 months for their body to transform, whereas for us dads, it doesn't hit us until the delivery, basically. I don't know about you, Yann.
Yeah, and that's when you when the baby. I totally agree with you, Simon. I was the same. I was waiting for my first daughter to be able to speak, because I can't talk to a baby. I don't understand what it's all about, you know. Now with my second daughter, I'm enjoying much more the present moment, which I did with Mia too, but now I'm more experienced as well, because at the end of the day, it's only one time, you know, depending how many child, but they only that age once. So, you know, when Mia will be 14, 15, she won't cuddle me anymore, even maybe when she'll be younger than that. I don't know when that, and I would miss that. So therefore, I want to enjoy every single moment with them and be present. So
That's a
we
really
as
good point, because
men,
there's
we
different stages, right? Like there's different
yeah
stages,
yeah
obviously, and you want to be there to really enjoy every single stage and to
yeah
just soak it
exactly.
up,
And
right?
and that's why Stoicism again is a roadmap. You just remember what the old Stoics said, and you know, just enjoy the moment. And yes, it's hard. Like coronavirus is hard for everybody now. We're all in the mess all together. But what it has done for my family now is that I'm spending even more time with the girls, which is great. And it's another challenge to be that many hours in a row with them. Before, I'm still working, by the way, but not as much as before COVID-19. So I can't escape as much. But you know, the hours after hours and after 2-3 days in the house all together, it is challenging. But you just remind of yourself that they might be gone tomorrow. And I even told that to Mia once. She was upset about something, or can't remember exactly, but I told her, I said, look, imagine you wake up tomorrow and I'm not here, or you know, something happened, you know, and we're not here. And straight away she understood. It's amazing, kids, how they understand quickly.
I have heard that, and I've heard that the best approach when kids, for example, ask really deep questions that you were not ready to answer, right? Like, because they will come out with those questions. Like, the best approach is to try and answer their question in a way that they will understand, and to try and be there for them, as opposed to just saying, "Don't worry about that." And
exactly. They need to hear the truth.
And I think would you guys agree, and if you do, then how do we fix this, that there tends to be sort of a move, you know, you guys think about memento mori, and the way that you see that is like, hey, my kid could die, and so I should enjoy every moment with them, and I should love them and be there for them, right? But many parents would be like, well, my kid could die, so I'm going to do everything that I can to smother them so that they don't die, right? Like, do you think that people are too overprotective these days, now that we have so much information and we can see all the bad things in the world happening? And if so, what do you think is the antidote?
I think well, again, it comes from Stoicism. Like you learn through your experience, and so if we protect them, how are they going to learn? That's my logical answer. And to go back on your previous question, you know, the kids do ask like really deep questions, and I think they are teaching us something, like to be curious all the time about everything. And if they ask you a tough question and you don't know, like they look surprised, and then you think about it and like, yeah, that's right, I should know. I should know this. Oh, I have time, I have resources, but I'm so focused on work that I'm not answering. And I think I shared that at the beginning of our interview, just before we started recording, that I was having lunch with my kids. I prepared lunch for them, and I had to get ready for this interview. And my wife is doing her coaching in our bedroom, and you know, you're in a rush. And I said, okay, kids, I really need to go. I'm going to go for that podcast, and I'm going to go with Yann, and I'm going to be with Simon, and we're going to talk about Stoicism. Right? 5 minutes to go until we start the recording. And then my 10-year-old goes, "Hey, Dad, what's Stoicism?" You're like, whoa. Okay. And you have two options. You're like, well, shut up, I don't have the time, you know, I'm in a hurry, like I need to respect my host, And or, which is where we go now as daddies, well, you take it as an opportunity for teaching. You take the time to answer it because you value his question, and at the same time, you don't try to make it super simple. You try to actually give them the depth of it. And I was able to come with the quickest explanation I had that made sense for me was it's a way of life, but differently from the religion where you have to believe in it, you can simply apply it with simple tools. And he started telling me, is that the same thing that when I write into my journal or when I write songs about my experience? I'm like, yes. And it's funny how deep they are, and it's funny how you have to come up with answers super quickly.
Oh, sorry, I was not on. I was not on there, but yeah, I think that's so cool, and that actually makes me think of something because, Julian, you mentioned that you sometimes take the deeper questions as an opportunity for you to learn. Like, I'd love to know from both of you, like, what is the best thing that your kids have taught you about how to live life?
My daughter, I'll just take things that are really fresh in my mind, Simon. This week, she reminded me not to use my mobile in front of her. And she
beautiful.
said, because so I've written my personal philosophy like you recommended in the past, Simon, and I've done it twice already. It's about once a year. And one of the part with my family is obviously to be as present as possible at the moment in the house when I'm with them. And so I said, I'll try to avoid using my phone as much as I can, Facebook, emails, all those things. And a few days ago, I was just probably checking an email or something. And she said, Dad, put your mobile down. Why? Because we are more important. I was like, yeah, perfect. Love it. Yeah. And then I just put the phone on the table and I say, yeah, you're absolutely right. I'm very sorry. I often apologize to them actually. And I say, look, I'm sorry. You're right. Absolutely right. Let's do it. What do you want to do? Yeah. I think that's beautiful. That's
awesome.
That's great.
Yeah, that's so awesome. And that's something that you wouldn't have seen 10 years ago because we didn't have the mobile phones 10 years ago, right?
Yeah.
Kids are adapting. They're onto us already.
Yeah, we would have we would have had a different distraction. My dad 30 years ago now, he on his Sunday he would watch TV. And so okay, we'll watch with him, and then we'll go for a bike ride. But
yeah. No, that's awesome. I love that though. I think that's so beautiful, Dad. Like put away your phone, Dad. We're more important.
Yeah, we're more important. Yeah. Okay.
What about you, Julian?
It's man, I just learn every day, but it's I don't have an example straight away, but I think I've got the counter example, like in the sense of, I was paying, on Sunday night, I was paying my rent on my laptop, and the kids were like, come and play with us, and I was like, no guys, this is more important. I really need to pay the rent. So it's like, it's that harmony, like that balance that we need to find. And so it's not about preserving them from any, being a helicopter parent, preserving them from everything or putting them on top of the world and not caring about the rest. It's really finding that harmony about everything and teaching them that harmony, that sometimes, mom and dad need their own time. And then sometimes they need to remind us that we need to look after them. So it's finding that balance, that harmony that is a constant learning experience, I think.
Yeah. And when it comes to the balance, that also has a lot to do with the partnership, right? It's like, I'd love to know from you guys, how does parenting change your relationship with your significant other? Like how do you work harmoniously there? Because I imagine that you probably don't agree on everything, and you probably don't agree with every decision when it comes to parenting. So what's the harmony there?
Simon, that's the secret. You have to agree on everything she says.
I go by the saying, happy wife, happy life. and it gets me out of trouble a lot. Simple, but
I like it. I'm happy to take that advice. We can accept that. We'll be humble here.
Yeah. Well, I think I've learned with the time to put my ego back in my pocket. Whatever the wife wants. Sure.
And I think you have to take in mind that you didn't marry a mom. You married an individual, became your wife, and then together we became parents, and we learning together, and we're not the same person that we were 10 years ago, 15 years ago. So it's really like learning together and helping, like allowing each other to learn. I don't know if that makes sense. And allowing them to change.
It's a teamwork, and I think my wife, still my wife, but became more like a friend now, and we are a team. Naturally, when one of us is weak, the other one is pulling up the weight, but it just comes naturally. We don't argue much. It has happened, but usually communication is good. Some good arguments actually is really good for the relationship.
But what I found is, and I think it's even harder for Yann and myself, because our wives are Japanese, so from a very different background, and we didn't get the Japanese wife that says yes to everything the husband says. We got the wives who escaped Japan for that reason.
We got the modern version.
Yes, the independent version.
The one that they're not gonna follow exactly what the culture said, and yes to everything, and they want to be their own.
But what I really learned, and that's one of the passages from Marcus Aurelius that I read recently, was, if you live in harmony with yourself, then you're in harmony with the universe, and that includes your family and your coworkers. And I think one thing that I wasn't doing was really to live in harmony with myself, or allowing myself to live in harmony with myself. I was like, my goal was to provide for the family and do anything to do that, and just sacrifice all the rest. And I realized that I have to future-proof myself. I have to be in harmony with myself first before I can be in harmony with my family. And my wife taught me that. She's
That's
the
good
one
advice.
Yeah. But she demonstrated by her behavior. She started working 3 days a week instead of 5 to be able to look after the kids, but also for her to have her own time, and for her to go surfing, for her to get massage, and at first I thought she was rewarding herself for having such a traumatic experience at birth, blah blah blah. And then 3 years later, I'm like, hang on, no, she decided to look after herself. And by looking after herself, she can look after the kids and myself, and she can look after her business as well. So the lessons come from everywhere, especially from your wife.
Yeah, definitely. And that's it. Like, it's a harmony, right? And I'd love to know, in terms of looking after yourself, what do you think the best thing that you guys have done would be in terms of looking after yourself? Like, what's the best thing that you've done to really make sure that you're the best person that you can be?
I think, Julian, you should start on that one and talk about your solo trip, because I reckon in his family they've got that subject nailed, really. I think they do.
So what is a solo? Yeah, I like that. Thanks for that. I didn't think of this, but that's actually pretty cool. And I was actually due one. So once a year we go on a solo trip, and a solo trip is a trip with just yourself. It's you go on holiday with no kids, no wife, and it sounds so weird. It sounds totally opposite to what our society or what our parents taught us. Where you all go on holiday together, and you can imagine my mom saying, "Is everything all right with your wife? Because you're not going on holiday together."
That's the first question I would get, definitely.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Is everything okay? And now it's funny because my mom has embraced that as well, and So just to give you the perfect example, in January, we went on holiday in Bali. We flew with the kids, and then my parents came from France, and we stayed with them for a night in the hotel. We left the kids with them, and then my wife and I, we took a Uber, or the equivalent, a Go-Get. And then I went to drop my wife on one beach in her Airbnb, and then I went 2 beaches down in my Airbnb, and I got to do everything I wanted, like me. I wanted to do my meditation. I wanted to do my swimming. I didn't care about going to the local market, Simon. I really didn't care. I didn't want to see the latest, the cooking thing. No, I just wanted to be on the beach, do my thing, like have no schedule, no diary. And once your wife is on board with this, once your kid's on board with this, and even when your mom is on board with this, it becomes so relaxing, because it's also something you can look forward to it. So I know I have to do this once a year, and if I don't do it, I can also, in between, I have to do one night at a hotel, or just one night on my own, just as a break. And I realize it's not a failure. It's a way for me to look after myself, so then I can look after my family and my business. So yeah, thanks for the reminder.
That's so
Yann.
good. Yeah.
Yeah. I would look. I haven't done that really like the same way as you, Julien, and now it's a bit hard with a 19-month-old and a pregnant wife. So, but it's in my mind to do in the future for sure, because it's awesome. I think you come back fully recharged, and I've got similar thing when my wife and the kids going to Japan, like they did last year. They left me here for 3 weeks, and it was like a solo retreat. Well, I was still working, but I had so much time for me. It was awesome. I could study Stoicism. I could climb mountains almost every day. I was just, it was great. You feel really good after that.
Yeah, it's awesome. And keeping active, and just doing things that, and I think it's so important what you guys are saying, which is that essentially, just because you have a wife and just because you have kids doesn't mean that there aren't things that you want to do that would be really good for you, right? And I really think that there has to be that balance there, right? Like it can't be a win-lose situation, because then everybody loses, right? And I guess I only had one more question, really, and this can be as simple or as complex an answer as you guys want to give. But for somebody who hasn't had kids yet, what's the biggest thing that surprised you or crushed you, or what's the biggest thing that you wish you had have known that you would pass on to somebody who hasn't had kids yet?
All right, can I go, Yann? Because
yeah, sure.
So this one, I know it's a given. I know that we know, but we teach our kids with our action, with our behaviors, without noticing it, right? And when you realize this, when you see yourself in your kid, when you realize that you've made an impact, that you realize, I've got an example for you. Is I do a lot of personal brands. I do a lot of videos of myself on LinkedIn, like on a daily basis, and so I'm very used to be on camera. My son this morning, 10-year-old, like did a video on him to help all the kids find their creative flow, and he was so confident on the video, and he was awesome. He was using words that I was using, and I was like, and at the end of the video he goes, and if you want to know more, just join my mastermind, blah blah blah. I'm like, geez, what did I do? It's how I end my videos. Exactly. And that is so powerful, Simon, because you create a human being, and you want it or not, you're creating it. Everything you do, the good thing, the bad thing, they're catching it. So if you work on being a better person, not even a better day, if you work yourself on being a person every day, you are actually transferring this, teaching this to your kid just by your action and your behavior. And it's like, it's a gift that keeps on giving, because it happens at every stages of the life of the kids.
That's a good example.
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
totally
that's
agree
good
with that.
advice. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I
Jan,
would
how
not
about
have said
yourself?
better, honestly. Same line. Yeah. To be a role model to your children is yeah, it's great. So enjoy the moment. You know, always be the best version of yourself in front of them, because as Julian said, they see, they understand, and as young as few months old, 6 months old, they're sponge. They see, they understand. So if you're not behaving in the right way with your wife, with your children, or whatever, they'll see, and that will have an impact in their life, and we are responsible for that. People that find the excuse, but say, oh, they're just kids, you know, they like this, they're rowdy, and they're like this. Maybe because you've let them be rowdy in the past for too long, you know. We are really responsible for those human beings and what they will become. So, and it starts from day one. Don't ignore the first few months.
And it's about enjoying them from day one. I was reading a statistic the other day. It was pretty scary. Is that by the time they turn 16, you will have spent with them 75% of the total time you're going to spend with them your entire life. So when you think about it, it's like, so don't think about, I'll spend more time with them when they're 3, 4, 5, 6, 10. No, this is now. You need to enjoy it now. It's it goes super quick. I think I've got 6 years to go now. My son is 10.
Now that's good advice, and that's really helpful stuff as well, to do that kind of mathematical equation in your mind and learn the equations that can show you, like, factually, this is how much time you'll probably spend. And I've thought about similar things to do with how many times I see my parents, right? And
that's right.
And like, if you see them once a week, or if you see them once a month or once a year, it's like, how many more times do you get to see them in your life before they're gone? And it's kind of scary, right? So you've really got to get that memento mori and say, okay, people could die, so like let's spend this time now and enjoy it. But man, I'm so glad that you guys have come on the show. I'm so sorry about the giant whippersnapper or whatever it was outside that was just I don't know, they just picked the wrong time. But memento mori, and also it's out of our control. So I'm so glad that you guys came on. And Julian, do you want to tell us where we can find your podcast and everything? And I'll put the links in the show notes.
Yeah, and before that, I would like just to give an advice for all the people who've practiced Stoicism and who've been listening to your podcast. This is one of the toughest times for parents and for dads. And without Stoicism, it would have been really hard for me and for Yann to survive the past 5 weeks. So I know we're not supposed to, to pass on our philosophy, but this is a time where we say we can at least share your podcast, Simon, and say, look, listen to those little, especially the smaller chunk of podcasts, because those are like nice snippets that make you think twice about how you can actually behave when you're freaking working from home with the kids 24/7. This is pushing you to the limit, and I feel that there's a lot of that out there that are going through really, really tough times. And there's also a lot of moms, right? But don't get me wrong. But for dad, it's just, they've been just pushed back to the home. They have a lot to learn, and they have no guides. And really, Stoicism can be a guide. And if you want to know more about this, when we talk about this, we talk about future-proofing yourself, future-proofing your family. And then even doing so by building your own business and building more flexibility in your life. You can find me at futureproofyou.co, and or just look for Futureproof You podcast for working dads on Apple iTunes. That's it.
Yeah, I love it. Thanks so much. And yeah, Julian, Yann, it's been absolutely wonderful, and we're going to have you back many more times, I'm sure. And thanks for coming on the show, and we'll talk to you next time. All right, so there you have it, my interview with Julien and Yann. Now, if you're a working dad, if you want to improve your ability to be the best possible father you can be, make sure you head to the links in the show notes and check out the Future Proof You podcast for working dads. You're going to absolutely love it, and it's going to be so helpful for you. So I'm so glad we had this conversation today. I'm going to have these guys back, the two French fathers from Australia. I love it. And without any further ado, I hope you've enjoyed this episode, and I'll talk to you next time. But until then, I hope that this episode has helped you on your rise to the good life. Ciao. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Practical Stoic Podcast. If you'd like to stay up to date with the Practical Stoic community and everything to do with this podcast, then just go to my website, simonjedrew.com, and subscribe to the Practical Stoic Weekly, a newsletter that I send out every week with updates and all sorts of great Stoic insights. You can also find me everywhere online by searching Simon J. E. Drew. See you next time.